So we're going to go over a bunch of stuff today. It's going to be, it's almost too much to go over today, but, and then we're going to have a little fun Friday. And as an added treat to start off the show, we're going to be joined by Ike McCorkle. He's a former Marine and congressional candidate. I'll tell you a little bit about him, and then, and then we'll just get started. As a former Marine himself, as well as the brother of an Army captain, the son of an Army nurse major, and the grandson of 2 World War II veterans, one a West Point officer, the other a Jewish Army Corps pilot. Ike McCorkle says service is in his blood. In recent years, he's tried to translate his predisposition into elected public office. This is the third consecutive attempt to win the 4th congressional district seat. McCorkle faced off against former Congressman Ken Buck in 2020 and 2022. He lost each time by double digits. You got to give it to him. He kept coming back. He kept coming back for more. And I guess that's the name of the game. Abraham Lincoln lost a lot too before he won. And I got to tell you, Ike is he is a staunch. Well, he's a liberal. And I told you before that we're going to have some good conversations. We're going to meet in the middle. And so I'm just going to ask all of you to lay down your sword. We're going to have probably a healthy conversation, but we'll get to all this and my friend Ike when we come back. Untamed is going to be untamed. It's going to be a little crazy. I want to talk to my people. I want to talk to my brothers and sisters. We can have grace and humility in how we interact with other people.
Oh, hot dog, look at you.
And nobody talked about what's really happening. And let's have conversations about what truth is. Okay, welcome back. So I'm just going to jump right in it with Ike. Ike and I get into pretty healthy debates and conversations pretty regularly on Facebook. And I think his followers don't like me. They don't really appreciate the fact that he tolerates me. But we have some healthy conversations. One of the things I said is, let's start having the conversation. So Ike, welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Joe, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate you having me on today, and also just appreciate, what you do for our community and providing economic opportunity to folks and just being a good American. And honestly, I think, if I had to state one reason why I'm here today, it's because I think more important than anything else is kind of like what your commercial said, is that we need to bring Americans together and find consensus and agree on what the truth and objective reality is, in order to make sure that we set conditions to improve quality of life for the American people.
So I agree with you. And this is where we do agree. But you ran as a Democrat. Me and you have gotten into it about, one of the biggest ones we got into was when you said, F Nazis. And so I took that as, oh, yeah, okay. All right. You call me a Nazi? You're going to call me. Right. And so I went out and I said a lot of different things. And then some of your followers said, oh, that's, you got to bring me facts. And I go, I thought that's what I just did. I thought I just put facts on the table. And so I have to ask you the question. How do you reconcile Democrat policies with what's good for our community? I mean, how do you reconcile it?
Well, I don't agree with either party across the board on their policy platform. But as a wounded veteran, having services at the Veterans Administration,
which they're terrible at. I mean, let's just be honest. The VA is terrible at giving people services.
Well, I think that there are case-by-case basis, and there are some good VAs around the country, and there are some that are not so good. And I think it's absolutely important that we point out those ones that are not so good. But I've had excellent service at the Veterans Administration, whether it's mental health services or, post-combat injury, rehabilitative services. I have a paralyzed vocal cord from a combat injury as well, and I did vocal therapy. And so I've received a lot of good. So, I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, no matter which side we're on. And I think I want to break down, too, that very conception of which side we're on in America.
Well, shouldn't we be on the side of Americans?
Absolutely.
I mean, if we look at this from just the perspective of, how do we reconcile? How do you square up the fact that Americans have been left behind by leadership at the state level, local level, and the federal level for decades? And I'm not pointing out something that I don't think everyone knows.
No, I don't think you are either. And, and I completely understand the American people's frustration, for instance, with, $50+ billion being allocated to USAID when we have veterans living on the streets here at home. And so I think that's the disconnect.
Okay, so Ike,
yes,
you're right. It is see, I told you, we all agree. We agree on things. We get in the same room. We always agree on these things. But let's talk about some of the policies that the Democrats have pushed forward. There was a bill. Let's just talk about Colorado for a minute. There was a bill in the legislature that would have increased the punishment for pedophiles, sex traffickers, and basically deviants. That was put up there, and the Democrats killed it. So how do you kill a bill that protects the community? How do you kill a bill like that gives the community a sense of settling, like that there's going to be accountability?
Well, I would not have killed that bill. I would not have advocated or spoken against it.
They did, though.
Right?
You would agree they did.
I did. I do.
Okay.
Agree. And so, like I mentioned, I don't agree, across the board with either party on all policy. But I do think that we need to examine the letter of the legislation itself and make sure that the downstream effects are what we intend for those to be. And, I don't know the specifics of the bill that you're mentioning. And so as it's been presented as a bill that would, increase the penalty for pedophiles and child abusers, so on and so forth, I would certainly support something like that. There are other bills, that Democrats have put on the floor in the Colorado House and Senate that I would not support either, trying to increase the penalty for simply having a firearm in your vehicle, for instance. I think it's insane that the owner of the vehicle and the firearm would be punished for the theft of property from an individual. They're the victim of a crime, right? And so there are bills on both sides of the aisle that I think don't make sense.
Well, what are the bills on the Republican side that don't make sense? Let's just pick one. Pick one bill.
All right. Well, I'm not going to talk about a specific bill. I'll talk about a specific issue, though.
Okay.
And I think that the offset from communities and drilling regulations would be one. And only because, I don't want fracking 300 feet from my kid's playground, right?
Okay. All right. You don't want fracking, so you don't...
I don't want fracking 300 feet from my kid's playground. It's a vital resource, especially here in Colorado. Creates a lot of revenue, especially in District 4 up in the Weld County area. And so we absolutely need to continue prosperous production on all fronts, but with smart regulation in place to make sure our communities aren't exposed to toxins.
Okay. All right. I don't think I want I know a lot about fracking, so I know that it's pressurized and you're pushing water. In Colorado, you have to use water. So we're pushing water in the cracks in order to drive up oil or natural gases that they can then capture.
Right.
So I'm not sure that has a lot of effect on the kids. It's not, maybe. Maybe. And I'll tell you right now, I'm not educated enough in that environment that I could even have a discussion with you about it. I don't think it's good to do anything 300 yards from a kid's school.
Right.
I mean, frankly, so other than probably have a residential area. So I'm not a big fan of some of the things they've done to education, which is actually one of the things I want to talk to you about. Education. We're near last on education in the country as a state.
Yes, sir.
Less than 30% and this is just in 2024 now, so we have new numbers. Less than 30% of kids in the city and county of Denver are graduating from high school.
Well, I think that's a symptom of policy.
Okay.
And investment.
Glad you said that.
And investment. And so, when I was running for office, I was reading about the way that funds are allocated for education. As you well know, they're tied to property taxes. Mm-hmm. And that kind of determines the dollar investment we have in each pupil's education here in Colorado and largely across the nation.
Ike,
yes,
what's
sir.
the percentage of money in the state of Colorado that is used for administration that doesn't find its way being used for children?
I'm not sure I know.
It's over 60%.
Gotcha.
So over 60% of the money in the state of Colorado that is captured for education is used for the administration. So the buildings,
yep.
People that are not teaching, no teachers, not even the principals. This is
right.
The administration. It's just over 60%.
Yep.
Tell me why I need a daddy. Tell me why private schools can not have a daddy. Charter schools can not have a daddy. Homeschools, no daddy, right? But I need to spend 60% of the dollars in the education budget on administration and fluff, basically.
Right. Well, I'm not going to say that it's important that we spend 60% on the buildings and facility maintenance and so on and so forth. What I do think though is that it's extremely important that we set new policy to ensure that every Colorado student has an equitable amount invested in their education, whether they're in a charter, private school, or public school. And like in Lake County, for instance, because of the property tax and the value, average student gets around $2,000, $2,500 invested in their education annually. Go next door to Aspen, that's up to $8,500 to $9,000 per student. Mm-hmm. And so I would agree with you that we have some serious problems with property tax issues and pushing veterans and pushing the elderly out of their homes.
How many times do you think that happens a year in the United States?
I don't know specifically, but I know it's a lot.
North of a quarter. I did this because yesterday I was looking at it. So this morning I wanted to be prepared to sit down with you and go through things that, I'm a nerd. I like data, right? And but I wanted to be prepared to be able to have a conversation with you about why I think the policies of the Democrats are both dangerous, they're irresponsible, and at times downright evil. Now, I'm not saying you're evil. I don't think you're evil. We had probably one of the best conversations I've had with anyone, Democrat or Republican, at DCF Guns. Right?
Yes, sir.
And so, I want to get to a place where we have a common ground while also recognizing that we shouldn't be institutional slaves and that we shouldn't be in this place where we're driven to the exception, not the rule, right? Over 250,000 people a year lose their homes to property tax abatements.
Yeah, that's unacceptable, especially in the United States. Essentially, you're taking somebody's property away after they've already paid for it.
The average age is 71.
Right. And so,
and that's imagine 71 people or 71-year-old people.
Right.
Losing their home. Like some of these people have lived there for 20, 30 years, can't pay the property tax bill, and they sell the house for pennies on the dollar.
Right.
In order to recoup their money and give money back to the people. In some cases, like some states like Michigan, people had to fight the state because if they sold the house and they had 100,000 but they only owed 30, they got to keep the rest.
Yep.
Right.
And I'm gonna be frank with you, Joe. I'm struggling, to stay with the Democratic Party. And at the same time, I'm struggling with coming over to the other side of the aisle.
Come on, baby. Come on over. Come on over, Red Rover. Let's go.
because I want policy that, like we mentioned a few minutes ago, that serves Americans. I don't care if they're Democrat, Republican, Independent, Green Party. But what I do care deeply about is, cutting veteran services or services that are provided to my brothers and sisters in arms. And I want to make sure that no matter which party I support and I legislate with, that is our objective, that we do indeed, with the letter of the legislation, ensure that our veterans have the health care, the mental health services, and the funding that they need to make sure that they have opportunity, that they can use the vocational rehabilitation, excuse me, for their education and their employment in the workforce, and again, contribute to our community even after their military service.
Okay, so you're struggling with one side, you're struggling with the other side. I struggle with both sides historically, but I don't struggle with President Trump's policy. But before I get to that policy, I want to Apollo. Can we bring up the video from yesterday of the Democrat women? I don't even know what they were doing.
You talk about the video thing, the the game character. Yeah.
Can you pull that up? I want to show you something.
Gotcha.
Yeah, give me a sec.
And the reason why I want to show it to you, Ike, is that I don't have to like things that some Republicans say and do. I don't. But we're not silly.
No doubt.
We don't. That there's so many names that get dropped, like you're a racist, you're a misogynist, you're a homo. I mean, on your page,
You're
dude,
Nazi.
that guy
Something like that, right?
Guy called me a fascist like 4 times. I was like, can you please tell me what a fascist is?
I've had
And he's like,
I've had Democrats call me a fascist on my from my own party. I think some of the nastiest attacks I've received have come from my own party, quite frankly.
yeah, but they attack with such. They attack with a lack of intelligence. And so, okay, go ahead. I got to show you this. Let's start. This was yesterday. You tell me what you're seeing here. I mean, come on now. I mean, seriously, this is not even this.
Nah, it's people with way too much time and money on their hands.
They're congresswomen.
Yes, sir. And I mentioned some of the attacks coming from my own party, and some of the attacks on yourself, on my own page, and I think that's one of the problems, the main problems that we have right now in our country is the divisive rhetoric.
Yeah.
And you mentioned President Trump's policies, and I don't wholly disagree with President Trump's
You better be careful.
policies.
You might have come home to a house that's been TP'd. And
Right. I wouldn't be surprised at all. I mean, I've had my front yard vandalized a few times, but that's okay. It's the price we pay for being public figures and for, advocating for our beliefs. We're always going to have disagreements. I don't know whether the proper way to express oneself is to vandalize property, or I would disagree with that, but, to each his own, right? But I don't wholly disagree with President Trump's policies, especially not on Greenland, especially not on Gaza, especially not on the Second Amendment. And so, I think that there are significant places where we could find consensus. And I mentioned to one of my friends before coming on the show that he's like, why are you going on there to talk to Joe? He's a fucking right-wing extremist crazy, And I was like, I'm going on there because he's an American and he helps people in our community. And quite frankly, because he has influence with the sitting administration. And I think that that's a good thing, and that we should talk to each other and I think tone down the rhetoric to a degree, and examine the letter of policy and how it's going to, again, benefit American security, American prosperity, expand our national borders, ensure that our southern border is secure, that we produce more energy than anyone else in the world, and that, most importantly, that we invest in the research and development and technological advancement that's required for us to be superior to communist China and the Russian Federation.
Yeah. So, man, I was never called right wing anything before 2020,
right?
Which is like the hardest part about this.
Gotcha.
And I had a friend that came into town that I met through a contract that we have for our company,
right?
And I overshare with people quite often. I tell people about my life. I tell people about my, I invite them to stay at my home. Even if I disagree with them or agree with them. I'm not saying I disagree with this person because I don't. But there's a certain aspect of what has happened in politics that has allowed for us to make it a zero-sum game. And if you disagree with someone's conversation, you have to shut them down.
Right.
You have to not. And now I always say, always ridicule the retarded. I mean, if it's do not give space to things that aren't real. And I'm going to ask you about some of those things today. Your friend might get mad at you for answering it. But that there are some times that people just don't have access to information. And so you form an opinion based upon wanting to do good. I believe that most people that are Democrats want to do good. I also believe that most people that are Republicans want to do good, and that neither one of them understands the foundation by which they're supporting. That'd be fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I agree with that assessment. And yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why I'm sitting here on this show. Like the conversation we had that you mentioned in DCF Guns. And it was a great conversation. And there's no reason why we can't have more conversations like that and acknowledge, I think, that they're good people and on both sides. They're good people that are focused on American prosperity, the Constitution, and American superiority, that are Republicans and that are Democrats. And I think one of the tragedies of our time is the division of America. And I think when we come to terms and figure out a means of bringing folks back together around our shared values, that we will be much better off. And I think that we'll be much more able, to counter our, our geopolitical adversaries.
Everything you just said, I can't disagree with. And if I were to close my eyes and hear you, I would hear a Republican. See that? You understand though?
Yeah.
So, and I don't mean Republican in the rhino sense, like what's Patch Man's name? He's a veteran too. Crenshaw. I'm not a fan of his. I'm not a fan of his because I give him his respect being a veteran. But the disrespect that he shows for people, Republican and Democrat, he doesn't even care if you're on his side. He will literally, he'll treat you like trash, right? He's that guy. He's the smartest guy in the room. If you ever wonder who the smartest guy in the room is, it is 1,000% Crenshaw.
Dan, got it.
But as we start looking at, when I look at the things that I have issue with, it's the fact that I ask people all the time, what's President Trump's policy? Here's what I get back. And it's on your page a lot. He's a Russian asset. He's a Russian asset. He's a Russian asset. I'm thinking to myself, he's a really bad Russian asset. If he's a Russian asset, he's not very good at it, right? Because the things that he did when he was in office in order to kind of hold Putin accountable, or anyone accountable for that matter, he tends to treat everyone the same, right? Good for America? Great. I'm on your side, right? Let's make sure that it's an equitable situation. But these guys behind me, these brothers and these people that are in this country, they're the ones that I have to support. So how do we reconcile the fact that he's a Russian asset because he had business dealings in Russia? How would that make him a Russian asset? How does his conversations and what he says? What is just one thing that he did, like one thing that he did that says definitively Russian asset?
I can't say that I have irrefutable evidence. I can say I'm extremely...
Do you have any evidence?
I'm extremely concerned.
Okay.
Because of the actions that have been taken recently. And I have to say, hats off to President Trump for...
You better be careful.
In his initial administration, because Obama refused to give lethal aid to the Ukrainians, refused to give them the javelins that they needed. And when Putin did invade, when Russian Federation did invade, those javelins were absolutely critical to the Ukrainians' ability to destroy Russian armor. And you have to look at the situation on the ground, technically and tactically speaking. Whatever we have to say about Joe Biden's other policies, under the Biden administration, over 90% of Russian armor was destroyed on the battlefield. No other U.S. presidents accomplished that, but it was destroyed because of the assets that the Trump administration had previously provided, right? And then the Biden administration continued to provide those assets to the Ukrainian people. The reason I'm extremely concerned about loyalties and, whether he's a witting or unwitting Russian asset, the policies that have been advanced in the last 3 weeks that have crippled the Ukrainians' ability to mitigate Russian missile attacks with their air defense systems that we've already paid for and sent into that country are what make me so angry that I get to the point where I say, well, goddamn it, and I participate in the rhetoric and excuse my French, apologize for taking the Lord's name in vain, but that's the level of anger that I feel when my brothers and sisters in arms are abandoned on the field of battle in Ukraine.
All right, so am I a Russian asset?
No, sir, I don't think so at all.
I've been on RT probably 100 times. I do not support Ukraine in this battle.
Why is that?
Well, this was one of the things that was going to come out, right? Is that so I'm a nerd when it comes to information.
Mm-hmm.
Like I love to read, and I like to be the most knowledgeable person about the information in front of me, so I can make an educated decision on who the enemy is.
Right.
I'm going to go back in time a little bit, and I'm going to kind of 2001. What happened on September 11th?
Well, the Twin Towers were hit.
Yeah,
I was at the recruiting station. The next day, I'd already completed my initial enlistment in the Corps, and I was back in college, serving in a reserve unit in Alabama. When the towers were hit on September 12th, I was down at the recruiting station swearing back in onto active duty in the Marine Corps.
Okay. Did you have a high regard for the Muslim population at that point?
I think that George W. Bush did a pretty excellent job of coming out and speaking to the American people and conveying the message that people's religious denomination or affiliation does not make them an enemy. I was in the
I was in the media. I saw the media then too.
Yeah.
And their big response was Muslims bad. Right, this ideological war.
Right.
We got to destroy them. Weapons of mass destruction. We went in there. Not the first time we went in there, by the way. You can go back to 2000 or 1995, right? Yeah. That when they did that report. Well, it was 90. It was 91 that they did the. It was 90 and 91 that they had the first offensive when they went into Kuwait.
Right.
Right. And that was the first offensive that we got involved in. But that dragged on for about 3.5 years, an offensive that we didn't really hear about in the media very much, but it was there.
Right.
And over 500,000 women and children died. And Madeleine Albright got on TV when asked a question in 60 Minutes. She said, "Is it worth it?" It was the death toll in Iraq up to this point, nearly 500,000 women and children. Was it worth it? And she answered, "Yes, it served our interests." I don't know if killing 500,000 people serves anybody's interest. In 2001, fast forward, I hated Muslims, and hate is not just a relative term. I mean, I would say things. I would vocalize my disdain for Muslims or Middle Eastern people.
And I think that's a pretty natural reaction when you see the towers fall and there's 19 Saudi terrorists, that killed Americans. And I think the unfortunate reality is that that's a correlation with the Muslim religion or with people who are affiliated, with the Muslim faith. I don't think that it's necessarily a product of said faith because, like President Trump said, there's good folks in every crowd.
Yes. Well, fast forward, 2007. Right? I taught myself Arabic. I was asked to go to the Middle East.
Well, you're better than me. I took an Arabic course. I was taking 18 hours when I was in the commissioning program and at CU Boulder, and I had to drop out of Arabic because I was just overwhelmed with.
Yeah. Rosetta Stone's a real thing. It actually works, and when you have plenty of time when you're flying, then you tend to learn. I told you I'm a geek when it comes to information. I love information, and I love people. Right. Well, the only reason I got involved in this political bullshit was because of people. It wasn't affecting me at all. I could go drink Mai Tais for the rest of my life. It would have been fine. I'd have been fine. Right. I'd have found a way. Right. 2007, I go to Saudi Arabia. Right. I meet with people I had no business being in the room with. No, I had no business being there. And hence started my journey of these 6.5 years in the Middle East and Africa, traveling to 65 countries, being involved in conversations, writing papers, doing things, and negotiating in areas to stop conflict. Again, something I had no business doing in many nations that frankly, I wasn't even supposed to be.
Yeah.
I don't think Muslims are my enemy.
Right.
Right. I read the Quran not to become a Muslim, but to understand the chasm between our faiths.
Right.
I was in Israel, met with Mohammed Hussein Falal, the head of the Hezbollah, who passed away in 2011. And you would go, what? Why would you do that?
Right.
Because they have, President al-Bashir of Sudan, right? President Kafur of Ghana when he was the president in Ghana. So I spent a lot of time with a lot of different leaders and solving massive problems. Every time that I got involved in those things, I always learned that U.S. policy was lying. They were lying. I looked into Ukraine back in 2014. Not because I wanted to get involved in any sort of battle and conflict, but because I wanted to understand. And I didn't even know about the correlation between voting machines and the stuff there. I got involved in it because I wanted to understand the conflict between brothering nations. See, Russians are Ukrainian, Ukrainians are Russian. In large part, there's you can't differentiate between them. People that are Ukrainian live in Russia. People are Russian live in Ukraine. And historically, it goes back, 1,000 years, 2,000 years, that they're related parties. So I want to understand it. CIA comes in 2014. You had the Maidan coup, 2014. You have an indisputable evidence to this day that shows that they stole that election when you had Poroshenko and, help me.
I've lost my sound.
You lost your sound? Can you give me back a sound, please? All right, test. Can you hear it?
Negative.
Apollo?
You guys still hear me? I can hear you.
Yeah.
We can keep going.
Yeah, he'll fix it for us.
Gotcha.
He'll get us kind of dialed in. Was it that?
Yeah, that was it. It started again. Well,
back? No.
It's not back yet.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
So, if you rewind, 2014, like we're talking.
This is the important part. I want to tell you. Azov Battalion.
Yeah.
A true Nazi regime. Represents over 25% of the fighting force in Ukraine. You get into the Donbass region and the conflict that's been going on since 2014. And you look at the atrocities that have been reported to the UN, have been reported to The Hague, of the Azov Battalion raping, using women and children as target practice in that region and killing their own people because I see them as opposition because they don't agree with what's happening in Ukraine. You talk to Ukrainians, which I do often. And I have friends that are Russian. I go downtown. I go to Red Square. Go down there. I have my jalapeno pickles. Amazing people down there, right? Now they're going to say I'm a Russian asset because I go to the Red Square. So I love the food. I love the culture, right? But they killed their own people. They continued that through it. The Ukrainian people are so afraid to speak out. There's no opposition TV. There's no opposition news. There's not even an opposition to Zelensky. You had 43 biolabs that they tried to hide, only to have them uncovered, and inside of a congressional hearing, they had to admit that they had these biolabs that were funding gain of function to create more diseases in these environments in an unchecked environment that hadn't been checked in over a decade.
Talking biolabs in Ukraine?
U.S. biolabs.
U.S. biolabs in Ukraine. So I haven't researched that specifically, but speaking of Ukraine more broadly, I do feel like we're kind of assigning some of the actions of the Russian Federation to the Ukrainian people. In other words, it sounds like projection. So, for instance, the Russian Federation invaded Ukraine. They've killed, women and children. They've raped.
When are we talking? Are we talking back to 2014? Or are we saying 2022?
Yeah, the current invasion.
They were already in there, though. The battle had been going on for 8 years.
Right, and we're talking the Azov Battalion, which was completely destroyed in Mariupol.
No.
I mean, to a man.
No,
they were
not true. The Azov Battalion is still walking around today.
Perhaps the Azov Battalion is still walking around today, but that's different personnel. The Azov Battalion,
I'm sure some of them got killed, but in large part, the Azov Battalion are not the ones on the front line. The meat grinder is not the Azov Battalion.
No, absolutely. The Azov Battalion was trapped and surrounded by the Russians in Mariupol and eliminated down nearly to a man. So they've stood it back up since.
Who said that? Who said the Azov Battalion was down to a man? Because I can tell you right now that some of the people that were the original people in the Azov Battalion, and I can look. I love to research this stuff. They are still alive and kicking, and they still have the same Nazi reality to them, right? And I'm talking real Nazis, not some of these like pansy guys that are on the street trying to act like Antifa. I'm talking real Nazis, right? They're still there, still kicking. They're picking people up in the street, little boys, and taking them, putting them on the front line. That's happening.
I think that we need to actually look at the reality of what's going on the ground in Ukraine, and since our intelligence assets have been cut off in the last week, and the software that supports those intelligence, that support those weaponry that we've given the Ukrainians has been shut down. We've seen hotels hit with missiles that actually had United Kingdom and American personnel in those hotels.
They shot a rocket into Poland and then said it was Russia that did it, only to have to admit that they're the ones that shot the rocket into Poland.
Well, yeah, they were shooting rockets to shoot down incoming barrages of Russian rockets or missiles, more specifically.
It was an errant missile.
It was,
bro. It literally was a missile that was like there was nothing going on. Like nothing going on. It's like we and you are sitting here, and somebody said, "What's this button do?" Boop. And it shot that rocket into Poland.
Oh, that's not entirely true because there was an incoming Russian missile and drone barrage. And they were firing to try and.
That's how they were able to identify the fact that came not from Russia but from Ukraine.
Right.
Because there was nothing going on. It's like somebody decided, hey, we're all going to go to sleep for a little bit, except for the guy over here. You just hit whatever button you want and shoot a rocket into Poland, and we're just going to say there was the Russians. It was almost that ridiculous.
But do you think? Okay, let me ask you a question. Do you think that because we're going to have to disagree on some of these points, but do you think that the Ukrainian people deserve to have a sovereign, independent nation of Ukraine? They voted 93% of them. To break away from the former Soviet Union. Now, Vladimir Putin says the breakup of the Soviet Union was the worst thing in modern history.
Time out. You're saying that the people
of Ukraine deserve to have their own sovereign nation that they voted to constitute, right?
All right.
When the Soviet Union broke up.
Okay. They took a vote in the Donbass region, and almost 95% of those people say, yeah, we want to get away from Ukraine. So now you're saying that it's the opposite. That
I think the problem is that we're having votes that are being taken at the point of a gun.
Hold on a second. What do you think is happening in Ukraine when people are getting loaded up into their vans? Look, I tried to find a correlation between Russia bad, Ukraine good. I tried everything. I mean, I went through and did all the reading. I started picking up the phone. I started talking to people who are Ukrainian on Telegram. And I was like, I'd make them show me pictures, videos. I'd make them walk around with it, show me some stuff.
Yeah.
I had a conversation. You know, we had what was his name? Apollo that was killed? Lira. Yeah. Gonzalo Lira. They tortured and murdered this guy. He was a journalist. He was an opposition journalist that was reporting. How about the parliamentary leader that just got done meeting with Zelensky right after the offensive started? Because this is absolutely, unbelievably terrible. And what we should not be entering into this. We should get to the tables immediately. 2 hours later, he was gunned down, literally killed. I mean, there's no elections in Ukraine. I mean, and the people in Ukraine, as of last week,
3 years ago they had one. Well, 3 years ago they had one, and 73% of their parliament voted to.
5 years ago they had one.
5 years ago to support. Pardon me, to support, but 73% of their parliament did vote to support Zelensky and his, affidavit suspending elections because of they're in the middle of a friggin' raging war.
If you did not agree with suspending you want to talk about persecution that's happening, the people that did not support getting rid of elections, which by the way would have favored them because a lot of them would have been out too, right? They are the ones that are under the massive amount of persecution right now. Some are under house arrest. Some have had their families threatened. Some have tried to leave Ukraine and can't.
Gotcha.
So I mean, we just can't walk past the atrocities of Zelensky and say Russia bad. Look, if somebody walks in here and punches you in the face, and I say, yeah, but he's a Republican, he's on my side, I would be a piece of trash. Like that would be. Like, my job is to defend you because you're my brother.
Yeah.
Not because of the D or the R or any of that other stuff, right? So he's going down. He could scream at the top of his lungs that I'm a Republican as I'm putting him on his back.
Right.
We have to look at what right is right and wrong is wrong. And the arguments that we're having do not center around truth.
I would agree with that. And I do agree that they don't center around truth. Foundationally speaking, from my perspective as a former, force reconnaissance operator, excuse me, my paralyzed vocal cords mess with me, formerly holding a TSSCI clearance, Vladimir Putin and the Russian Federation are our geopolitical adversaries. They are our enemies. Vladimir Putin has used, nerve toxin to poison people in the United Kingdom. He's invaded Georgia. He's invaded.
Do we have evidence of any of that? Because I've actually looked for all of the evidence related to that, and outside of CNN or media outlets, I can find no credible evidence that would support that at the Hague, at the UN. And I have friends that are still in that environment in the UN, and I'm like, can you give me some information related to this? No.
Well, I would say that circumstance would lead one to believe.
All right, stop. If you say that, then let's talk about the Nord Stream pipeline, where the U.S.
just finish real
helicopter was above it before it blew up.
Okay, well let's finish real quick because the circumstances are such that Russian agents were adjacent to the individuals that were poisoned in close proximity of them in the United Kingdom. It's documented that they took a flight, and then that same nerve toxin was found, a trace element of it on the flight, and the individuals that were poisoned were former, former Russians who had defected to the United Kingdom, and they were the enemies of Vladimir Putin. And lo and behold, they get murdered with nerve toxin. Well, I don't think that's a coincidence.
Do you know how many Americans we've killed? I mean, do you know how many Americans that covertly we killed? Seth Rich, just to name one. I mean, Seth Rich was in the DNC, had information related to some of the unbecoming actions of political leaders.
Yeah.
He was gunned down in the back. You know who the first person was to show up at the hospital when Seth Rich was shot in the back in DC?
No.
Mayor Bowers.
Gotcha.
Why'd Mayor Bowers show up before even the police did? How did she know?
I don't know.
Yeah, see, this is my point. My point is that I take things with a certain amount of skepticism. Not to saying that it's not true. I'm not telling you that inside of Russia there aren't operations just like the Mossad, just like the CIA, just like everything else. I'm telling you right now, there are rogue parts. Remember, the Wagner Group marched towards Russia.
Right. Thank you.
Trying to fix you here. Marched towards Russia.
Yeah.
Right. And when he marched towards Russia, what happened? And had to, finally shook it off and said, yeah, it's probably a bad idea. So there are rogue elements. There's rogue elements that tried to take out President Trump in 3 assassination attempts, right? Would you say we got one of them that's tied to Zelensky?
Yeah.
So, I mean, this Ruth guy, Ryan Ruth.
I don't know about the ties to Zelensky. I haven't seen that information, so I can't speak intelligently about it.
He's in his commercials. So, maybe that's not tied to it. He's got a AK-47 laying in the bushes, and he's also in Zelensky's commercial. Great. I mean, that's good. I mean, that's pretty much a coincidence of all coincidences.
If I was a Ukrainian citizen and had been subject to what Ukrainian citizens have been subject to by the Russian Federation, and I thought somebody was supporting directly.
What have they been subject to?
What have they been subject to? They've been subject to an illegal invasion from 2014 in Crimea, the annexation of parts of their country, the murder and
how many people in Crimea wanted to be annexed before they got annexed?
The murder and rape of their people, the abduction of of over 10,000 Ukrainian children forcibly friggin' deported to Russia from Ukraine.
Where is any of this information? Look, I have access to lots of information, and short of looking at articles, I go back. I sent an editor. Yeah, I sent an editor of The Guardian who wrote this article, and I said, "Listen, my name is Joe Oltmann. I want to be able to validate this stuff. I want to do a report on it. Can you send me any documentation of the rape and murder of people, specifically in Crimea, because there was a huge allegation of that?" Right. And the woman writes back. I need to find that. The woman writes back, "No, I can't give you I can't give you any information because I don't have any. It was a source." Okay, all right. I'm going to give you the last 5 minutes then, right? I got to get you back on, I don't want to. I want to get you on. I don't want to change your mind. But I'm going to bring you a binder. It's not going to have Epstein's list stuff in it. It's going to be a real binder with real information, not for TV, made up. So I'll give you the last 5 minutes of this part of the show. We only got through a couple things related to Ukraine. We need to dig more into that.
Absolutely.
I said this. I was one of the first people to get attacked in March of 2022, and I said I will be on the side of Russia every day, twice on Sunday, in this offensive over Ukraine. And I got attacked by crazy, and I said, "Listen, I'm for people not dying,
right?
And I want to get to the table, and I want a peace deal because I want people to stop dying." And that right now, more than anything, I feel as if Zelensky doesn't want that to happen. He wants people to die, right? That's the signal he's sending.
Yeah, from my perspective, he wants security guarantees for his people, so his people won't die. And I think that's reasonable for him to want those security guarantees because, like we've chatted about or alluded to in our conversations in the past, there were agreements made, like when I mentioned when Ukraine voted to leave the Soviet Union, they had 1,600 nuclear weapons, and they agreed to give those nuclear weapons up with the understanding that the United States, the United Kingdom, and Russia, the Russian Federation, would provide for their security of their sovereignty. Obviously, as we can see today, that hasn't played out. In fact, one of those countries that guaranteed them their sovereignty invaded And, we can go back and forth about it, but, hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians and almost 1 million Russians have died. And from my perspective, that's completely the result of Vladimir Putin's illegal invasion and attempted annexation of the entire sovereign nation of Ukraine.
But that's not what he wants. As a matter of fact, the agreement that he went to sign stated he wanted the UN troops. He wanted them not to join NATO,
right?
Because it was on the border of his country and it represented a threat. That was a part of the Minsk Accords back in 2012 that were signed.
Mm-hmm.
It said that they would not try or seek to bring Ukraine into NATO. And by the way, NATO was supposed to be disbanded years ago. After the Cold War, it was supposed to be done, gone. And unfortunately, just like everything else in government, it just sticks around. It's like a hemorrhoid.
Well, I think the North Atlantic Treaty Organization is critical to the stability that's been established since the end of World War II.
Ike, what stability?
And
what stability?
If we do not continue to assert the strength of the NATO alliance in opposition to the illegal Russian Federation's invasion of Ukraine, then I think we're going to be in a broader war in Europe. If we lose in Ukraine, my estimation, from my perspective, the reality is that Latvia, Lithuania, Moldova, all the Balkan states, Croatia, Slovenia, are going to be invaded, and perhaps Poland next.
Poland probably has one of the best relationships with Russia today in the region. I mean, one of the best.
Why they're investing 5% of GDP into their military right now, and on top of that,
and who do they see as the biggest threat?
Russia.
Wrong. That's not true. The biggest threat that Poland sees.
I've heard the president of.
Bro, my ex-wife is Polish.
Okay.
Her whole family is. I mean, and gotcha. So I have a vested interest. My children are half Polish. I have a vested interest in understanding what's happening in that country. And their number one threat is an invasion by illegal migrants coming through their border and actually causing the same sort of strife,
right,
and breakdown of just basic societal norms that they have seen at every other nation around them. And they had over 2,000 people that tried to get across the border into Poland. And they said, if you come across this border, we will just shoot you dead.
Right.
We will not capture you. We will have no interest in putting you in jail. We will literally kill you. 3 people made their way over. All 3 people were shot. The other 1,997 people decided the juice wasn't worth the squeeze.
I think that if the folks in Eastern Europe did not see the Russian Federation as the primary threat of the day,
they don't know
that we would not have seen Finland, we would not have seen Norway joining the NATO alliance. They're terrified because they don't want to suffer the same fate as Ukraine.
They're terrified because their leadership is shit. I mean, let's just call it what it is. Their leadership is trash. Their leadership is terrible. It doesn't represent strength at all. We have no leadership in that environment that represents the strength of the people, where they would not be overthrown and overrun by people that don't belong, with the same entitlements that the people that have been there for generations deserve in their own nation, right? I mean, at some point you can't look at I'll use UK as an example. I know we gotta wrap this up. We're gonna have a long form conversation because I know people are the comments are lighting up. They're like, wow. I am a walking encyclopedia of information because I take the time to study it. They told me there was ethnic cleansing and genocide in Darfur, in Sudan. Turns out it was all a lie. It was all a ruse. There's billions of dollars were spent. It was not just that it didn't happen a little bit. It never happened. It was never, ever, ever. That never existed. They split that country in half, and hundreds of thousands of people died as a result of it. Same thing is said for UK. If you're a raped woman over the last 30 years, there's 250,000 of them that they hid from the public. If you talked about being raped by an illegal, by a migrant, they call them something different there, they would prosecute you. So they took the victim of crimes and they made them shut up. That's not a just society, right? And those are the societies that we're standing up While we say Russia bad, Orange Man bad, I know we want to get to the table. And people don't take the time to read the agreements that are out there and understand what the rules were when they said, we'll give up our nuclear weapons. You guys protect the sovereignty of our nation. And then George Soros went in there, and really bad people went in there, and they did really bad things. And that was basically the devil's playground in Ukraine for the CIA for a very long time. And now all of a sudden we're here having this conversation, and the foreign policy that the United States has put in those areas by rogue operators is untenable. But we have not had peace. NATO has not brought peace to anything that they've ever touched. Go look through history and look at when NATO comes in and what happens within a 5-year period of time. I can talk about North Africa. I can talk about Middle Africa. I can talk about the Middle East. We can talk about what's happening in Asia now, which is even worse, or Sweden. What's happening in Sweden right now?
Well, I've got to get my son to his allergist appointment. Right. So I just, before I go, and I am coming back, and we're going to have a long form conversation. I want to tell you how much I appreciate you and everything you do for our communities. Yeah. And God bless you. And I will come back, and I appreciate you.
Appreciate you. I'm going to go to a commercial break, and I'll be right back. When we come back, we'll talk about some Friday fun stuff. I do genuinely appreciate this man. And he is a Democrat. I'm a Republican. He's actually walking around now. I'm going to get him. Oh, I'm going to drag him over here. We're going to get him over here.
I'm on the fence.
but he still has those Democrat tendencies. I got to get that out of him a little. No, and truthfully, I'm not trying to change him. He's not trying to change me. We're trying to have a conversation that maybe you can have in your community that'll lead us to better places. We're going to go commercial break, and we'll be right back. Are you looking for monthly income without risks of stocks? Here's something you won't hear on CNBC. There's a unique way to collect royalties directly from America's most productive oil fields. No exploring, no drilling, no operating headaches. You simply collect checks month after month. The best part? You can get started with just $25 through any brokerage account. The Oxford Club Chief Income Strategist, Mark Lichtenfeld, breaks down what he believes is the #1 oil royalty plan for 2025. Visit oilboom2025.com now to learn more. That's oilboom2025.com. Stop buying oil stocks and start collecting oil royalty checks instead.
Hi, I'm Joe, Supreme Leader of DCF Guns. What is DCF Guns, you ask? We're the best damn gun store and range in the universe. Do we have guns? We have all the guns. We got small guns. We got big guns. We even have beastly guns. We offer all types of training, and we have 5 ranges across our 3 locations. I'm a good shot. And of course, we have all types of ammo. We even have flamethrowers. Woo! We offer incredible membership opportunities, and members save even more on guns, ammo, and accessories. Military, both active and retired, and first responders get up to 40% off memberships. Come join the DCF family today, where we keep the range hot and the deals hotter. It's hot.
In every thread, in every stitch, Honor-Bound USA weaves the fabric of the American spirit. It's not just apparel, it's a testament to God, family, and country. At Honor-Bound USA, we're a family of patriots who put our faith, family, and America first. When you visit our website, you'll find a line of products that embody our commitment to pray, stand, speak, and act. As the official site for the Untamed podcast, all of our products proclaim speaking the truth with courage. We also have the powerful documentary from Professor David Clements, Let My People Go. Identify yourself as one of the few who are willing to stand for what they believe in. Join the Honor-Bound USA family today. Wear it as a badge of honor, commitment to the values that shape us, and a pledge to the bright future we will build together. Because when you're honor-bound, you're not just wearing a brand, you're embodying a lifestyle. Huh. Well, how was that? How do you feel? How do you feel about that interview? I would tell you that it was a pretty great interview for a lot of reasons. And I saw some of your comments. Actually, I saw all of your comments, and some of you were like, "I can't believe he believes that." Okay, so give me square this up for you. Some of the things that he said. Here's why I brought him on. One, he's actually a good guy. You say, Joe, he's on the left. Yes, very. But I just had a conversation with him where I said I couldn't support Ukraine. I said, I can't support Ukraine. Here's why. And as he was leaving the office, the studio, he said, you definitely have more information than I do. And that's the problem. The problem is that most people, Ike is most people. What you saw is what happens with most people in our country. He is mainstream our country. He's a veteran. He served our country. He was injured in combat in our country, fighting for our country. So he has a right to think whatever he wants. But he didn't know about the Azov Battalion. He didn't know about the rocket. Because there's a narrative that gets made up. And that narrative just aligns with a justification. Look, there's plenty of times that I say this quite often. The United States is not the honest place that you think it is. It's not honest. We have ruined more nations. I was on the Unsuspendables podcast that'll air tomorrow. I was on that podcast and I'm talking to Garrett O'Boyles and Steve Friend, and I'm just walking through the basic understanding that I have of why they need to go back in the FBI. And as I'm sitting there talking, because they want to know about me, and so there's a lot of things that I just decided I was going to share. Especially like this stuff about, what happened way back in the day that brought me to the place where I followed Jesus. And so I had, some of you have already heard that story before. But Ike had a conversation with me. He drove to my studio, came into the studio, sat down with me, and then let me beat him over the head with what I knew and what he didn't know. And he did so respectfully and said, I'll come back. So I like the fact that I can have a conversation with Ike. And he has changed my mind in different ways. He has changed my mind. Nothing on that we talked about today, but he changed my mind on things. And he still could change my mind if he could bring me facts. If he could bring me something other than saying that Putin is a puppet and that President Trump is a Russian saboteur. Well, if that's true, then you should have something. Well, no, I don't really have anything. I have strong, there's a strong indication. Well, what are the indicators? Show me at least the indicators. And that wasn't something that they had the ability to do. Well, today we're gonna go through a bunch of other things and try to make this a little bit fun. So we're gonna start about President Trump's statements today. I don't think people realize how bad Biden economics was for our country. And President Trump's been in for less than 2 months. There's a lot of really bad things happening. One, they're trying to keep interest rates high. They're purposely putting roadblocks in place for how people engage. The stock market is kind of hemorrhaging a little bit because of some, not uncertainty in the market, but uncertainty, roadblocks that have been created over time. And here's one of the things that President Trump said. He said, under the final 2 years of Biden, 1 in every 4 jobs created in America was a government job. But under the full first month in President Trump, an incredible 93% of all job gains were in the private sector. That's an astounding thing to have happen. Let's go ahead and play it. Let's go play what President Trump had to say in his own words.
Under the final 2 years of Biden, 1 in every 4 jobs created in America was a government job. That's a tremendous percentage. But under the first full month of President Trump, which we haven't even gotten started yet, an incredible 93% of all job gains were in the private sector. So that statistic just came out.
Unbelievable. He had this to say as well. So for the first time in 15 months, the job gains for native-born Americans exceed the job gains for migrant and foreign workers. Employment for native-born workers went up by 284,000. My foreign-born workers went down by 87,000. Let's go ahead and play this.
Big gains for native-born Americans. For the first time in 15 months, the job gains for native-born Americans, for American people born in America, exceeded job gains for migrant and foreign-born workers. This is the first time that's happened in more than 15 months. Employment for native-born workers went up by 284,000, while foreign-born workers went down by 87,000. Now, you've heard the same stat where foreign workers were taking up all the jobs or almost all the jobs. In some cases, literally all of the jobs. And now it's 284,000 native-born jobs here, people born in our country, 284,000, while foreign-born workers went down by 87,000. First time that's happened in a long time. So these are incredible numbers, and they're very early. I mean, we're here for 5 weeks, but we have been talking about it since the big win in November 5th. So a lot of these people, they listen to us speak and they say, well, I'm going to gear up, and they're gearing up. And so they've been gearing up. They've had a little time. It's not just 5 weeks. It's 5 weeks plus a few months.
So he's only been in office for less than 2 months. So in less than 2 months, these are the things that are happening. And we talk about the auto plant jobs coming back. We talk about the chip plant jobs coming back. American manufacturing is coming back because he's removing all of the obstacles that made it so they couldn't be here. I'd like to see smelting plants come back that allow for ammunition and to be made here in the United States rather than having to go get it in foreign environments. I thought this was interesting, that what President Trump said, and I want you to pay attention to what he says. Let's play a cut for it. Pay attention to what he's saying about a specific group of people. Let's go ahead and play it.
Globalists won't love this because this brings jobs back to America. So if they're coming back to America, maybe you'll lose some in other parts of the world. But the other parts of the world have done very well, and they'll continue to do very well. But I think the United States is going to be doing record business. We'll bring a lot of those 90,000 factories that have been lost over the last number of years. It's been, it's hard to believe. 90,000, think of what 90,000 is. 90,000 plants and factories are gone. We're going to bring back many of those plants and factories.
All right, think about that. 90,000 factories and plants are gone. If you brought back even half of those, now keep in mind what happens to happen in factories. Factories isn't before where you're just squirting milk into a bucket. That's not the factories that he's talking about. He's talking about chip manufacture, high-tech manufacturing, jobs that pay really well. From high-tech blue jobs or blue-collar jobs to white-collar jobs that have to follow those in those environments. And the states that we should be pushing those into are states that have sensibility in their governments as well. And here's something else that President Trump talked about in his speech today. He talked about one of what we would have to certainly call our adversary in this climate. Let's go ahead and play this cut 5.
And that's going to be the next thing you'll be talking about is Iran. What's going to happen with Iran? And there'll be some interesting days ahead. That's all I can tell you. We're down to final strokes with Iran. That's going to be an interesting time. And we'll see what happens. But we're down to the final moments. We're at final moments. You can't let them have a nuclear weapon. I think that I would have had a deal within 1 month after the rigged election of 2020. They were all set to make a deal. And then when I lost, they saw this person who's a stupid person, very stupid person. And they said, let's not make a deal. And they were right. He took the sanctions off. They became rich under Biden. They went from having no money to having $300 billion.
And he's not wrong. If we look at the state, the amount of conflict that happened in Israel and other parts of the world, a lot of that was sponsored by some of these bad leaders. You know, what's really difficult is that we find ourselves commonly looking at countries holistically and saying, Iran bad. The reality of it is the people in Iran are very bad. And we don't give the people a fighting chance to get out of that, so they end up putting themselves in this position where they're constantly fighting from behind. They have to remain silent. A lot of what we saw happen in Ukraine is much of the same. Hopefully we get through it. Hopefully we get through this. It's like having all of the things in place in the air at the same time. So now I got to tell you about more stuff that came out today. We've talked a little bit about Epstein, and today, the head of the FBI New York office, James Dennehy, was given a bagpipe send-off after he was forced to resign after President Trump's victory. He sent an email urging resistance. He sent an email saying, resist. And so they did this. They gave him oh my gosh, this is the most retarded thing I've ever seen. Let's go and play it.
An extraordinary scene outside of the New York FBI office in the last hour. Assistant Director in charge, James Dennehy, who was forced to resign under pressure this week, left the building to cheers from hundreds of his colleagues and the sound of bagpipes. He was forced out after clashing with Donald Trump's Justice Department after the removal of senior FBI leaders and requests for the names of agents who worked on the January 6 cases. He told those gathered that he will be their, quote, best cheerleader on the outside. We'll be watching for that. Another break for us. We'll be right back.
Throw the clown in jail. This piece of trash had people that surrounded him. This is what I talk about when I talk about a fraternity. This piece of trash had people around him. He's the one that allegedly he concealed Epstein files. I don't think resignation is enough. I think you need to use some of those tiny houses you got in Guantanamo Bay. Something else happened today, which as I look at it, it becomes more. We've talked about this for years. George Soros funded protesters. And so finally, Mike Johnson had something to say about it. Finally. Let's go ahead and play it.
But with regard to the town halls, look, I mean, we have Republicans who want to go out and be among their constituents and hear their concerns and dialogue with them. It's a big part of the job. But the problem is they're being ambushed right now by some, in many cases, paid protesters. You got George Soros-funded groups. They're very well organized. That's one thing Democrats do very well, is this organization, right? And they go an hour or two early before the event. They fill all the seats. And so the actual constituents of these Republican members can't actually make it into the arenas. And so it's not a productive dialogue at all. They're just walking into an ambush. So we've encouraged our members to think thoughtfully about that. There are a lot of ways now with technology to be in constant dialogue with your constituents. You can do telephone town halls and get 10,000 people on the phone at the same time. You can have small group meetings with industry or organization groups or various parts of your community, and to be very productive. So we want to do the job, do it well, do it efficiently and effectively, and walking into a staged production like that doesn't serve anyone's interest.
What do you notice about people on the left and the right when they talk about the fact that the Democrats have left the people behind? No question. Left America behind. But most of the people that you see that are out there that are in leadership are, they want to talk and they want you to have this decorum, but they won't actually talk about the problems that people face. We're overtaxed, overworked. A vast majority of this country is in a place where it's institutionally enslaved. School to prison pipeline exists, the opportunity desert, the food desert, the actual desert of education for much of the Democrat controlled environment is evident, but it's starting to creep into the Republican side because they have the same ideals. They put up the same garbage retarded rhetoric that the left does. And so they never talk about what really hurts people. And when you have a conversation with people on the street about what really hurts them, it has nothing to do with whether or not you want to save the ability to kill babies. That's not even the number 1 through 25 thing on their mind. It is radical leftists, Karens, who want to, virtue signal while walking past and stepping over the bodies of veterans and others. But I look at it and I can't help but think to myself, when they're on TV talking that way, when he's talking about that, I talk to my colleagues and why is it they never talk about what the people, talking about to the people, like here's what the people need and want. No, they make it up. They try to mule people along that, well, I know what they want. They want, they want this, and this. People are like, actually, I want no property tax, no tolls on roads. I want to make sure the education environment is not grooming my children. I want to have a seat at the table in the education of my child. And I don't want the school to prison pipeline that has been built that is sending black men to prison at a rate 12 times that in Democrat controlled environments. Sorry, that's reality. So we're going to close out the show. It's Friday. And so I'm going to make this a little bit fun for you. These are 3 of the most ridiculous things that I have to show you so far that you'll have to take through the weekend. The first of which is, I have no idea what I actually just watched. I put this up there. Some people on my socials were like, I can't believe they actually did this. I'm going to show you something that is probably the most retarded. Even I find retards couldn't put this on their page on X. Let's go ahead and play it.
Yo, this is the Ranking Rizzler on Appropriations, serving Connecticut's 3rd District. It's time to enter your dark academia Congress era. All right, besties, House Appropriation is the money moves in Congress. We are not chasing the bag, we are the bag. Democrats are making life smoother through government funding. It's giving, it's giving. So Sigma, main character energy. But Republicans' Project 2025 is mad sus. Eliminating the Department of Education? Negative aura points. Basically, the biggest phantom tax on the environment, on your education, and your rights. Big L posting it online, buddy. Democrats understood the assignment, but go off. See how I keep you informed? Very cutesy, very demure.
What the all right. Novel concept. You have kids that are 12 and 13 years old, 15 years old. They decided to change language. They came up with words that don't mean anything. No cap. Don't even know what that meant. And I hear some of these words and I go, speak English. Start there. Start by speaking English. Can you speak English for me? Anything. Just speak. Make sure it just sounds like English. See, it used to be that the generation that comes before you sets standards, shows you ethics, morals, teaches the younger generation. What you just saw is a retard who is trying to cater to the stupid and make us more stupid. So instead of actually, saying, listen, use your words. When I was 18 years old, I sounded as if I was not that smart. I did. I mean, it was, I spent a lot of time reading, articulating, trying to figure out, and it's not that I didn't have intelligence, I just didn't speak intelligently. Someone came to me one day and they're like, Joe, you sound like you're on the street. And I was like, yeah, I probably do. And it took me a while for it to hit me. But what he was basically saying is if you want to be successful, you have to speak articulately. You have to choose your words. I mean, if I didn't say the F word every other word, it was a miracle. But another generation above me came and said, hey, look, this is how you enter civilized society. But instead, you have somebody that is trying to talk to the dumbest human beings that have litter boxes in their rooms for themselves. That somewhere along the line, that's acceptable. So instead of actually teaching our children to be good, you let them convince you so you can groom them, because that's what it is, grooming. And the idea that maybe you're on their side, it's absurd. It's absurd. And here is 3 minutes. So anyway, Captain Retard moment for her. Great. I find retards. Go find the whatever you want to call the green-eyed or green-haired woman. I want to play this for you. This is 3 minutes of Democrats when they were asked why they didn't stand for President Trump's speech at all. 3 minutes. It's a lot though. Let's go ahead and play it.
Senator, how's it going? Johnny from Fox. What could Donald Trump do that'll make you clap?
Thank you very much.
What could Donald Trump do that'll make you clap?
I did clap when he said that the United States had supported Ukraine and given them lots of
Well, why not for Laken Riley's mom? How was that speech last night? Did you love it?
Well, I watched it. I don't think that was the best look for our party last night.
Very disappointing.
So you didn't stand up for anything?
The president got before the American people, didn't talk about how he could drive down grocery prices.
Senator, why weren't you standing yesterday for anything?
Very important hearing right now on anti-Semitism.
But you didn't stand for anything at the speech last night.
I don't know what you're talking about, where you got that information.
Well, there was nothing the president had to say.
Laken Riley's mom, you didn't stand for her.
Factual or truthful or anything like that.
We applauded.
You don't think it's worthy to stand up for her like everyone else?
We should applaud.
I need you to move.
Congressman, why didn't you stand for the speech?
Have a good day. I need to go to a meeting.
80% of the American people, according to CBS, loved the speech.
Again, I don't think with the United States...
Are the Democrats out of touch?
The United States of America. Forgive me for going here. Forgive me for being out of breath.
I don't know what speech they were watching.
They were watching the president's speech, Senator.
Really? It wasn't worth watching.
Why was Al Green so disrespectful?
You got to ask Al Green.
So I just pulled up to Congressman Al Green's office, went inside, see if he wanted to talk, because he did a lot of talking at the joint address, but they shooed me away. They said, we're not talking to Johnny. What was wrong with those Democrats? They couldn't stand last night?
Well, I think people got to see the difference between conservative Republicans and liberal Democrats. Liberal Democrats are miserable people.
I bet their butts were sore sitting that long.
Why do you want men and women's sports?
Therefore, I
Senator,
need to go. Aloha.
Why do you want men and women's sports, Senator?
Thank you.
Congressman, how are you?
Okay, thank you.
Congressman, why should men be in women's sports?
Shorts?
Sports. Why do you think
they should not be in shorts?
Senator, why are we paying for Sesame Street in Iraq?
I do not know that is true, so I'm not going to say yes or no.
You don't trust the Doge findings?
I don't really have an opinion on that. And I work in a business. I think it requires, we don't have to have an opinion on everything.
Do you have an opinion on Jesse Waters?
Oh yeah, I wish I had his hair. Yeah. And my dad's a big fan.
You need to get away from me.
Congresswoman, did you like the speech last night?
You like Jesse Waters? I want his hair. I can tell you right now, I want his hair too. I might have to go to what's his name's hair? What's that guy's name? What's the Pennsylvania guy's name? Oh, I'm actually starting to like him, Apollo.
Who? Oh, Fetterman?
Fetterman. I'm starting to like Fetterman. It's hard not to like him. Not a good look for our party. Do you like Jesse Waters? Yeah, I like his hair. My dad's a big fan. I'm thinking to myself, where's this guy? Okay, just to cap it up, I had to cap it up. I can't even believe I used that word. Just to cap it up. What does cap mean? What does no cap mean?
No
cap.
No
joke?
It's like it's like not kidding. Like as Biden would say, yeah, not a joke. No cap for real.
All right. Do you remember Jasmine?
Crockett?
Yeah. Do you remember her?
Yeah.
Do you remember do you have that?
Yeah.
All right.
I can pull that in again.
The Ghetto-licious. So hold on. No. Before, this is before. We got to do the before and after. Let's play this. Shout out to my boy, Kyle Seraphin. This is on your X page. And he says, did y'all ever wonder where Jasmine for US started talking like ghetto trash? Apparently, it was after she showed up in Congress and was told that was marketable. It is pretty gross how fake these people are. Listen to me. I just want you to know that Democrats are trash. Go ahead and play it.
Absolutely. First of all, it's good to see you in the new year.
Hold on. Let me make that stereo, the one channel's low.
All right.
I want to make sure everybody can hear it. If they only got one earbud in.
All
right. Here we go.
All right.
Absolutely. First of all, it's good to see you in the new year. No one could have told me that when I went down to Austin, now it looks like a little bit over a year ago, that I would be running for Congress. It's just not what my plan was. But what I've always decided is that I would step up when there was a need.
Listen, he up there, he's hearing all kinds of nonsense and bullshit. Let me just be real. And we weren't gonna sit for that shit. We wouldn't,
But when she called me and said, I think it's time for me to retire, and you're the one that I believe should take my seat, I really was kind of caught off guard. I didn't anticipate that. If anyone knows anything about the Congresswoman, they know.
We showed up, and if he had some sense, then maybe we would have been about that life. But y'all know he ain't got no sense. So please give some love. This took a little bit of coordinating to do, for sure. We got some cool shirts.
The congressional seat is over 4 times as large as my House seat. And I was just starting to get into the rhythm of doing constituent services and things like that.
We got Madam Williams, who just happens to have the honorary seat. It's not even honorary because she's holding it down, y'all. But the legend himself, John Lewis, that is the seat in which she currently serves. So she honored his legacy. This is the message that she wanted to send today.
While we are trying to raise up kids to be better examples of what we are in life, these people are trying to drive people down into the ground and set an example that will never lead to opportunity. The wealthiest families in the country are above the fray. The Rockefellers, above the fray. The people who get into the elitist environment that then use that elitist environment in order to put themselves at the front of the gladiatorial contest they call life are above the fray. What we get are people that we put into Congress that try to turn everything into, I don't know what you'd even call it. What would you call it? I think you'd call it kabuki theater. I want you to look at this and understand that she's going backwards. And do we have the video? We have the video. So she went from talking about, I'm going to run for office, to this.
The video games?
Yeah. No, the other one. The dun, 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 dun.
Wait, which one are you talking about?
Oh my gosh, are you serious?
The one we played yesterday? Wasn't she in the video game?
Where she's like, bap, 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 bap. Bap, 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 bap. You don't remember it?
Maybe I don't.
Is it just me?
Maybe I blacked out.
Hold on, let me find it for you. Hold on. Let me see if I can find it. Now, it was so important that I didn't share it. Daggone it. Let me see.
Oh, I got it. I know which one. I got it.
All right, tell me you got it.
All right,
yes?
I got it. Yep.
All right, play it.
What other ethnic group got their elected officials doing stuff like this, bro? Crazy. And what's so crazy, a lot of y'all probably are clapping your hands applauding this shit. Like championing this shit right here. This is crazy, bro. She's doing the chick that's drunk at the club face. What is she doing here? This is the ratchet tongue. She's doing the ratchet tongue, bro. The ratchet tongue, man. Y'all don't remember when Cardi B was doing that fucking shit on Vine all the time? Yes, the ratchet tongue. Folks, we gotta do better, man. Like, this was something that kids would do. Like, her children. You feel me? Like, why are you guys up doing this type of stuff and you guys are supposed to be elected? She's supposed to be an elected official. Like an elected person, right? Or a person that works in the government. Shouldn't she be working with more maturity? Like, this is crazy, bro. But like I said, it's so many of y'all out there that saw this and was like, oh yeah, you go, girl. Not realizing how bad this makes us look when it comes to being like a politician and running the country and stuff like this. Like, when you have a mature mind and you're a leader and all of that stuff, you're not even thinking about doing no shit like this. You ain't got time for it, bro. What if Trump came out with some shit like this, bro? Oh my gosh. That would be crazy, bro. That would be crazy. But I'm done. I want to hear from y'all. Are you guys enthralled by this? Like, are you?
There you go. I'll leave it with that. I'll leave it on that. On that note, I will leave it there. All right. I'll see you guys in a bit. I think that's it. Have a great weekend. Oh, did I forget something, Apollo? I did? I didn't?
Tina?
Yeah, well, I mean, we got to, we got to pray. Let's pray it out.
Oh, yeah, we do have to pray. You're right. Wow.
Yeah. All right, ready? Let's go. Let's pray it out. Father God, thank you for just the opportunity to have Ike in the studio. Thank you for the opportunity to just kind of, pull it back a little bit, and for the grace of which he was able to engage with me on multiple topics. Father, we're grateful for the opportunity you've given us. We're grateful for the friendships we've been able to forge, and for the eyes being wide open, and more people coming to that wide open environment. Father, I ask you to watch over Tina Peters as she is still in jail. And Father, if you could just release her. It's a big ask, and I know there's a lot of things happening, but and everything happens in your time. But Father, I would just wish that we'd just get her out of the turmoil that she's in. Father, I ask you to bless our leaders, President Trump and Elon and Kash Patel and so many others, with the sight and the wisdom to be able to course correct where we are as a country. Father, I ask you to ask us, or to help us, that we as people may have patience when needed, and execute quickly when also necessary. Help us, Father, that we may set aside our petty differences and find a way to work together, because it's clear that leadership is just not doing the job. So, Father, I ask these things, and just ask you to bless those that are listening, and give them a sense of peace. I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. All right. I will see you tomorrow. Somebody just put up a podcast about Jovan Pulitzer. Who is Stephen Gardner?
I don't know.
Oh my gosh. I don't actually know that this Jovan Pulitzer guy is a freak, bro. Wow. It is freakishly weird. I'm just watching a video somebody put out there. Whew. Somebody sent a video of Jovan Pulitzer having a conversation with this guy. I guess I got to reach out to this guy and tell him how much of a fraud Jovan Pulitzer is. This is weird. Okay. Anyway, have a great weekend. Jovan Pulitzer is a fraud. Jeffrey, Phil, y'all, guy that spent almost 2 years in a mental institution. Yeah, that's the guy that I would trust with pretty much anything. Sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's not a real world. It's Kabuki Theater, Apollo. Kabuki. Boogie, 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 boogie. All right, see you. Bye. I'm done.
Jenna Griswold, who is this big, fat slob, Colorado Secretary of State. Fat slob, Colorado Secretary of State. Jenna Griswold is a fat slob.
No, she's
fat slob, and fat slob. Jenna Griswold